Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of That Podcast. My name is Ryan Janke, and as Derek W. informed me, it was Coy and Vance from the Dukes of Hazzard. Coy and Vance are gone. Bo and Luke are back. We've got, Sarah DeYoung and Pastor DJ Lura are both back in the house.
Yay! All is right with the world.
Yep. Nobody knew who, even I couldn't remember. I remembered Vance, but I didn't remember Coy. But Derek sent me a message saying, hey, that's some Coy and Vance.
That's some classic TV. And
terribly classic.
I was not surprised one bit that Derek W. was able to give the correct...
No, he's there for us.
Canon of
we almost need
Dukes.
him on like the hotline. Like, I got a question quick.
Oh, yeah. Phone a friend.
Like a red phone.
Phone a Derek.
red emergency phone like that.
Talking to the commander.
Yep. So, yeah, he bailed me out. I remembered Vance. I didn't remember Coy. But anyway, it's good to have you both back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. And we have somebody else here today.
Hello.
We've got... Well, that was quick.
He wasn't waiting for your
here.
introduction.
No.
This is his,
no.
rather than getting a little intro, it's just...
Yeah, just right off and running.
Go.
Yeah, let's go. Yep, we got Michael McClellan is joining us today, and a lot of you may not know if you also watch our broadcasts on Sunday morning when you watch the modern worship service. We've got somebody in the back in a room running the sound for that broadcast. And
Avert your eyes from the man behind the curtain.
yeah, more often than not, it is Michael, and he is a very important part of our modern broadcast every Sunday morning.
What you hear if you're not in person, if you're not on site, Michael is the one dictating and deciding in true...
With an iron fist.
With an iron tyrannical fashion.
Yeah.
What it is that you are hearing.
What are we talking about today? Hold up.
Yeah. So we, Michael was here today, and so we he's on, and so Michael, you were warned.
I was warned.
If you want to sit in the hot seat, sit in the hot seat.
Well, I do a lot of radio stuff or podcasty stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So one thing we do when we bring people on, sometimes we ask them to share their faith story with us.
Oh yeah. So how I kind of got into faith. I mean, when I was a kid, I think my parents, we went to church, but we lived in Arizona at the time. So I was.
Where in Arizona did you live?
I want to say kind of like Glendale, Goodyear, around that area.
Okay.
Litchfield Park. So like west of Phoenix, a suburb more or less. But we lived there for about 8 years or so, and then we moved up to New Prague, which is where my family lives now because of family and other stuff.
Yep.
And then I came up here for school, but we'll get to that in a second. But in high school, we kind of just fell out of the church just because, like, we just did. I don't know. And then my junior year of high school, sounds weird, and I'm audio quality.
See,
I don't know if it's the headphones.
That's a mistake of bringing on someone who's like a sound.
I'm a stickler with this. I don't know.
Engineer is. We're gonna hear a lot of check, 1, 2, check.
I'm like moving my mic constantly.
Yeah, just keep it closer to your face, and you'll be.
Oh
good.
yeah, I know that. But my junior year of high school, we had 2 foreign exchange students, and we did this kind of every other year, something like that, where we brought in a foreign exchange student to our house, just because. Like we had 2 before them. First one kind of left their house just because they had like issues going on with their family and health and stuff. And then the second one that we had was probably the best one that's ever been through the organization.
Sure.
And then the following, or like 2 years after that, the organization that we were with was like, hey, do you want to do 2? It's like, well, we agreed to 1, but sure. And that was a mistake. So the first one that we had originally thought of, taking into our home, she basically backstabbed us and tried to throw us under the societal bus of the town for whatever reason, and through that turmoil, my dad went over to the church or was brought back into the church at in my town, Faith Point, the Lutheran LCMC church. And Paul knows Pastor Steve Dworth.
Oh, sure.
And that's where it all kind of snowballed. And then I got roped into it because the worship leader at the time was my choir director, and I just like got more involved into my senior year of high school. I was just being in there a lot more that I just basically grew into the church, and I was basically doing what I do now of like just helping out with the worship team, whether it be doing the sound, helping out with the band, or doing the slides for that, or just
So your faith in Jesus really came out of being invited into and encouraged and discipled really to be part of what happens at the church.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to go.
I think so.
And it came about during a hard time, and I think that's kind of good in that sense. I don't know.
Well, it's healing and there's some things about the church that are interesting to me, is that sometimes churches can be very closed, where everything that happens in the church is only done by a few people, and it's not out of like spite usually that happens. It's just that there's a few people that are willing to give, and they're very good at what they do, and it's easier just to do it yourself,
right,
than it is to bring up others alongside you. But that's how discipleship happens, you know.
Yep. I
do, you watch, then I do, you help, then you do, I help, and ultimately you do, I watch. And it's what Jesus does with the disciples, with the 3, the 12, and the 72. It's what he calls us all to do, and that's how you grow the kingdom. So it's cool that, especially at a high school age, your church was like, "Hey, come and be a part of this. Come and help with that. Hook them when they're young, right?" But that's what you've been doing, Ryan, with the broadcast ministry here at Atonement. I mean, every week it's like the kids are multiplying.
I walk around with a shepherd staff and use the hook end to just grab them. They come down South University. I'm just, it's great, and you know, bringing the kids in, it's something that, I don't know, maybe for some of them it's flashy right away, like, hey, that's cool, but then they come in, they get community, they make friends, and next thing you know, they're hearing a message, whether they wanted to or not, right. You know, and that stuff is sticking, and you can tell.
Yeah, and it's definitely a way to stick with the church. Doing the broadcast stuff, it gets you paying more attention to what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
When I came here, I got to say this about Michael. Michael, when I first got here, I thought was the entire broadcast team, because every week there would be this young college guy who could eat Pop-Tarts and drink Mountain Dew and not gain a pound.
Dr.
God bless
Pepper.
you, brother.
Oh, yeah.
Enjoy that metabolism while you got it. Who would be behind? I think we had like a 1 or 2 camera setup at that time, but it was Michael.
Yeah, it was.
There was 2 up there.
2 at the time.
Okay.
2 by the time that DJ got here.
And you had a background with that too, Ryan. You were saying that basically the whole family, it was a family business.
Yeah. Yes. So when we got involved, that was really how I think I've told the story before. We started coming to Atonement when Eli was in preschool, and then Haley went through preschool here too. But then when we became members, I reached out to Jarl, and just said, hey, you know, I like doing video stuff, and I know that you've got that going on. And so he brought me back, and yeah, pretty much it turned into the whole family. Like, I've got pictures somewhere of Eli when he's like 7 or 8 running the camera in the back, and we would do that every week, because at the time we were burning DVDs and then taking them to Moorhead and Fargo cable access.
Oh, wow.
Playing them on cable access. Yeah, so that went on for Gosh, when did you start doing what you did, Michael? Because it probably went on until close to that time.
I want to, because it was about this or January 2018 that I started doing stuff here. So about right till then.
Yeah. So and we started probably in 2012 doing that. So yeah, maybe 5 years we were doing that stuff.
Oh. So how did you end up here at Atonement? Or I should say, how did you end up in the Fargo-Moorhead area first, and then?
Well, it was because of college. Another thing that's like, I think like, in a way, whether you believe in, and then this is like a general thing, whether you believe in Jesus or not, I feel like there's like some sort of force within this universe that draws people to what kind of like fate, or like draws people to be doing things or what's going on. I wanted to do something in music, but I really wasn't sure what that was. And me and my dad went to this college fair in Minneapolis, and then we met with like a lot of college places and talked about the programs and how great they were. And then we met with MSUM, or Moorhead State, or whatever, however you want to say it. And,
back in my day, it was Moorhead State. Now it's, I believe, Minnesota State University Moorhead.
MSUM. MSUM.
Go Dragons.
Yeah, go Dragons. But we talked with one of the professors there, and he basically sat me down. It's like, all right, well, here's what you want to be looking into, and here's this and that. And he basically gave me like the stepping stones and guided me in the right direction of what I should be looking for. And it just so happens, like, yeah, even though it would have, he's like, yeah, MSU might not be the place for you, but here's what we got. And then I looked more into it, and it is what I wanted to get into. So that's when I came up here for college. And getting into the church, again, as I was talking about with my church at home, the pastor there, Pastor Steve, knew Paul. And it's like, well, go there, because I know that guy. And then when I mentioned it to Paul, he's like, oh.
And he still let you in the doors, huh?
Yeah.
Too cool.
It's funny. So, but yeah, we're glad that you're here, Michael, and you're here often, and we appreciate it, because there's a lot going on in that room back there when you're mixing sound, remembering to mute and unmute different things, and just having an ear for that, what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And I don't have that ear.
It's tough. Like I would take people in the back, but like even with my training, like sometimes I can miss stuff.
Well, I will tell you one story about Michael that will stay with me forever, because it was early on when we were broadcasting, and I think we just had the broadcast team in the church. It was kind of when COVID was heavy in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and I didn't know if I was live, because I didn't have anything showing me live on a TV screen. And I look out the back and I see Michael coming running up the hallway, and he stops he stops in front of the mixing room and starts doing jumping jacks.
Yeah.
And it's right in the middle of like, I'm praying.
It was live.
Yeah, I'm praying and I'm live, and I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? But he didn't move beyond the mixing room. I found out later it had nothing to do with me. He just, needed to do some jumping jacks.
He just felt like, getting the blood
I remember
flow.
that, because what I was trying to do, I was trying to distract you. I was.
Well,
I was purposely trying to distract you, but like a good distraction.
A good distraction. That's exactly what you want when you're up there, right?
Exactly.
A good distraction.
I will warn you, my friend. You do that again, I'm going to call you in front of the camera and introduce you to everybody.
So you got the audio version here, and then you get the physical one.
That's funny. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, I don't know.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
You guys had the idea.
So, you brought up this idea to me. You saw something in the news somewhere talking about Jesus and like political affiliation. So,
Oh, yeah. Jesus is a socialist.
Jesus is a socialist.
Well, he's also a Republican
He's a Republican socialist?
and a libertarian.
And a libertarian.
Oh.
Anything else?
Yeah, capitalist.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
anything else?
Yeah, he's all those things. You didn't know?
What else is he?
Oh, you didn't know?
Is that like a part of the extended version of like a prayer somewhere, like on the business card of Jesus?
I don't know.
Listed
runs
out in
down the
small
whole
print.
thing.
It's a scroll.
Yeah, back in his time, it was like a whole slab just listing what Jesus' affiliation is.
Well,
No, it's-
Jesus really is affiliated with all that. That makes more sense why each group is like, Jesus is on our side.
Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. If you go online, you can find articles titled that. Jesus was a socialist, Jesus was a libertarian, Jesus was a Democrat, Jesus was a conservative, Jesus was a liberal. You can find all that stuff, and they all sort of lay out their their cherry-picked Bible verses to prove their side.
Yeah, right.
Air quotes.
It seems like that's something about Jesus.
Was he a libertarian? This is what I really need to know.
That's what you. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because depending on who's talking about libertarian, you could say libertarian means socialist.
What?
Yes, and libertarian means conservative, and libertarian means Democrat, and libertarian. So I think we need to talk a little bit about those terms, but it's not just in like political stuff. It's in everything that it seems like different groups want to claim Jesus for them. I heard this morning coming here. Did you know that there's 33,000 Christian denominations?
Really?
33,000. I think that means I don't know if denominations is actually the proper term. It's probably there's 33,000 different church associations.
Like LCMC, ELCA, LCMS.
We got 15 Lutheran, associations in the United States alone, but they're all Lutheran or claim to be Lutheran.
Right. Then you have all the different sort of other denominations. Baptist and
Usually
Catholic.
it's like you're not Lutheran enough. That's why you got a different group. But anyway, when talking about politics, it gets even more tricky, probably because, at least in the United States, we are so polarized right now politically. And you know what? We only have our own worldview from our own lifetime to be able to tell what things are like. And it seems to me, in my lifetime, this is probably the most politically polarized in my lifetime this country has ever been. Maybe it was very polarized during the Civil War. We had a war going on against each other. But that's why you see things like in the news, Jesus was a socialist, Jesus was a libertarian, because it's also a little bit of clickbait to get it to pull up. But
right.
I want to talk a little bit about political theory and just wrap our heads around this. So everyone, go ahead and close your eyes and take a nap.
Well,
All right.
before you say that though, it is clickbait. But if you read these things, you could walk away going, "Well, he was a socialist.
Well,
he was a libertarian."
Let's start there then. Why don't you share with us a little bit about, like, do you have something in front of you to
yes.
explain how is Jesus?
Okay, so let's see. I've got Jesus Christ Libertarian. This was written or published anyway, December 25th of 2010 by a fella named Tom Mullen. I don't know who Tom Mullen is.
So it was a decade ago.
Yeah, well, over a decade. Yeah. So he opens with John chapter 8, verses 3 through 11. Then the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand in the middle. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" They said this to test him. And so this is the story of the woman caught in adultery, obviously. And Jesus goes on to say, "Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And then the Pharisees all leave. So he goes on basically to say, as we approach the new year with conservatism again ascendant in the political sphere, this story of Jesus' uncompromising libertarianism seems even more timely than stories of his birth, despite the approach of his celebrated birthday. Nowhere does Jesus admonish social conservatives more harshly. This is an important distinction here. By social conservative, I do not mean anyone who disapproves of certain human behavior. The freedom to follow the dictates of one's conscience was the first inalienable right recognized by the founders of our nation. If one truly believes that, it goes on. But basically, he lays out his thoughts that Jesus was libertarian because he allowed people to just be free and do what they wanted.
Sure, yeah. And so that is
was a lot
interesting.
And he does go on to say that Jesus did not advocate for things being taken by the sword.
Sure. So I was wondering where the free market capitalism was going to swing on in there, but it was the social libertarian take that this author was writing, right?
Yep.
So I think this is important to understand. What is a libertarian, first of all? In the United States, libertarianism has a different meaning than it does in Europe. Where libertarianism started is it's better known as classical liberalism, or and liberalism takes as its key word the word liberty or freedom, right? Maximum freedom for the individual. Our country, the United States of America, started as a liberal state, which today would be libertarian, because liberal has taken on a different meaning as well. That means left of center. It's come to be associated with progressivism, which is closer to socialism, which we can talk about too. But libertarianism really is the worldview as far as politics and government is concerned, that the individual, by natural law, should be able to exercise their maximum liberty with minimum government protections of those liberties. It's not that the government gives those liberties.
Right.
It's that the entire purpose of, and this goes back to a guy named John Locke, that governments are only legitimate if they rule, the rulers are there by public consent, by individual people. And in our country, the United States, founded as a republic, a democratic republic or a constitutional republic, that's how we started. That the entire purpose of the government is to protect the liberties of the individual over and against the collective.
Right. They were there to ensure your rights, not take them away.
Exactly. And so if you read like the Bill of Rights, they speak almost like the Ten Commandments. They're negative. Like the Ten Commandments, why it says you shall not do this. Why doesn't it say what you should do?
Right.
Well, because it's limiting evil. It's not advocating a limit to how you can express goodness or love. I mean, Paul talks about that there's no law against love, right? There's a million different ways to express it, but there are laws limiting evil. And so the Bill of Rights limit what the government can do to you rather than saying what the government is supposed to do for you.
Right.
And that's a completely different way of looking at what the purpose of government is. When you get into other political systems like socialism, or socialism really is kind of an umbrella term that includes social democracies, and it includes communism, it includes fascism, which also gets confusing because in America, when the different sides of the political spectrum begin arguing, those on the left call those on the right fascists, and those on the right call those on the left communists. That is not how the American political spectrum actually is or works. Both fascism and communism are to the left of the center of the political spectrum in the United States. And the political spectrum in the United States basically starts with, you have anarchy on the far right, and you have tyranny on the far left. It's only in Europe that the center point is social democracy or socialism, and to the left of that is communism, and to the right of that is fascism. But in the United States, communism, fascism, they're all part of a socialist structure, not a republic structure, which is, or a democratic structure, which has anarchy on one side, where there's complete lawlessness, and tyranny on the other. And what the founders recognized and understood is that the colonies had a right to be self-governed because they saw the monarchy of England had become a tyranny. And John Locke taught, this is where they're getting their ideas, and he was classic libertarianism, is that if a government becomes tyrannical, the people necessarily have the authority to overturn it. Because the entire purpose of government is not to rule over the people, but to protect and enshrine the rights of the individuals, of the people. So when you read our Constitution, when you read the Declaration of Independence, that's the starting point. So where does that fall in this political spectrum between anarchy and tyranny? It falls just a little bit further left than anarchy. That's our federalist system of government, where we have not one government, but actually two governments that oversee our lives, our state government and the federal government. And there's our last 200, 300 years of the American experiment has been, how do we maximize individual liberty, but also assure security? And there's always this move on the spectrum, and the Democrats and the Republicans run back and forth on it. What does not fit and what is antithetical to the American experiment is true socialism. Because socialism teaches that it's an economic and political system that basically argues that it's a rejection of capitalism. Right. The idea that you individually will receive the benefits of the means of production
of the whole
of your own individual progress and work, and that you have the right to purchase property and develop and so on. Socialism starts with the position to say that the means of production should be held collectively by all people.
That's what I meant a second ago. Of the whole.
Of the whole. And so the popular term is like liberalism or libertarianism, as we would call it today, would say maximum liberty, minimum government. Right. Socialism would reject that and would say from those who can for those who cannot, right. or from each according to their ability to each according to their need.
So Jesus was a socialist then?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because as an idea, socialism sounds great. In fact, I would go so far as to say, and our experience of communism in the United States has to do with dictatorial governments like North Korea or the former Soviet Union or China or whatever. Communism as an idea is pretty sweet. And you can look to the Bible and see, like, the early Christian church. I've heard this argument a lot. The early Christian church, they were a bunch of communists.
So Jesus was a communist.
Well, and now we get into the question here. Why doesn't communism work historically?
I can tell you.
If you look at every institution where communism has been tried, which is really just an extreme, it's a totalitarian form of socialism. Because even in socialism, you have like a social democracy. It's always this balancing of individual rights and the goods of the people. They're just higher on taking the goods of the people. Like every democracy that you can think of in Europe is a social democracy. And so they give you more stuff, but they take from you more stuff to spread it around. Communism, they take all your stuff.
Yeah.
Fascism, they take all your freedom.
Yeah.
But it's all what the government is going to do for you. And the more that you give to the government to do for you, the more liberties you're giving up.
So Jesus was a libertarian.
So when you think about this and you think about communism, it's a great idea. Why has it never worked? Why does it seem to be like there's this common outpouring of misery? Like we're all equally miserable, and a loaf of bread costs $20.
Because we are a fallen people, and when you put people in front of these,
bingo,
we are. You let people handle it, and eventually it's going to crumble.
Yeah. My grandfather was a janitor at a church, and Grandpa had this great saying. He would say, I love the church. The church is a great place. The church is a wonderful place. If it wasn't for all those people. Because in church, we recognize that we're all sinners.
Yeah.
In politics, no one wants to admit that they're a sinner.
Right.
And sinners run human institutions, and so it's going to be imperfect. Was Jesus a communist? No. Was Jesus a libertarian? No.
Was he a socialist?
He was not a socialist.
Democrat?
He was not a Democrat.
Republican?
He was not a Republican.
Part of the Constitutional Party?
Green Party.
Green Party. Independent. Jesus wasn't any of those things. If you really want to get technical, I guess you could say Jesus was a monarchist, or what would you call someone who's into royalty?
Well, Jesus is a king. How's that?
Well, and I'd go a step further to say Jesus is the king.
The king. That's yes.
And the thing about Jesus being king, and the word in Greek is monarchia. That's where we get the word monarch. In Greek, it literally means the rule of one. Right? But the difference about Jesus as compared to everybody else is monarchies are great. Communism is great. Socialism is great if the one who's running it is perfect. If they're not, you get like King Saul. Right?
Yeah, right. King Saul. That's what we talked about earlier. I think George W. Bush, you can find this. I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was a quote from him saying a dictatorship would be a lot easier as long as I was the dictator.
Exactly. It's kind of like the phrase that I like to say when I get frustrated with stuff. Well, it'll all be better once I'm Pope. It's Jesus is the king of the universe, and when he ushers in his worldly kingdom, because we're not there yet, we live in this time of what's known as two kingdoms, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of man, and the kingdom of man is broken. God's kingdom it already reigns. I mean, Jesus already sits on the throne, but it's not revealed to us yet by sight.
Right.
When Jesus comes again, the end of all things, we will see. All of creation will see, because the old will be completely passed away, and the new heaven, the new earth will begin with the king in our midst, and then it will be perfect. And you know what won't be there? Politics.
Right.
Or political theory. Because what will remain is a perfect relationship. Because when you think about, it's all about relational. How do we interact with each other? And often it becomes an issue about power. That's why, politicians have such a low approval rating. You might like your politician, but politicians in general, I think Congress has a lower approval rating than anybody.
Yeah.
Jesus is not playing that game.
Right.
He's playing a bigger game, and we don't like it because he's the one in charge.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Jesus can't really be a libertarian because he's not laissez-faire toward me. He actually cares what I do.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the same time, Jesus can't be a socialist because it's not about taking from everyone.
Right. It's about giving of the heart.
It's about giving to everyone.
Yeah.
And the thing about the thing that Jesus taught about, if you think if the principle of communism or socialism is a political government to impose good things like taking care of your neighbor, but if it's imposed on you, it's not what Jesus does. It's actually a violation of "you shall not steal."
Right.
The seventh commandment.
Right.
So Jesus doesn't say the government should take care of your neighbor. He looks at you and me and he says, "You take care of your neighbor.
You do it."
That's why I put you there."
Right.
because he's creating relationship, not a political structure.
And this is where it can get confusing for people, or where they can sort of use it as a sword, so to speak, is, well, Jesus said that you're supposed to give to your neighbor. So so he's a socialist. Well, wait a minute now. He didn't say that you're supposed to take it from me and give it to my neighbor.
Right.
So he's a libertarian.
Right.
But no, none of that.
No,
none of the above.
None of that. You can't put political worldviews on Jesus. If you really want to get down to semantics, Jesus is the king, which means if it's any political view, it's a monarchy, but it's the monarchy that he has established, which means he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And we have to be under that. In fact, it's in a right relationship with God to be obedient to what God calls and says. Jesus is an imperialist.
Actually, you brought up something a little bit ago. You probably know the name of it right off the top of your head, but Martin Luther wrote about, it was called The Doctrine of the Two Kingdoms.
Yes, the Doctrine of the Two Kingdoms.
Yeah, Martin Luther wrote about that and how they intersect, and
and what you can't do is say, okay, well, the kingdom on the right, God's kingdom, is the church, and the kingdom on the left is the government, because that's a complete misreading of what Luther was saying.
Right.
It's nothing like that at all. The worldly kingdom, or the kingdom on the left, is what we see. And God's hand is in the midst of that, but God's hand is hidden, so to speak.
Right.
And so what does God ordain for us to see? Well, government, good government. And when government is tyrannical, God's hand can be in the midst of that too, overturning bad government. What's great about the American experiment, we have a peaceful revolution every 2 years. We elect new representatives who are there to look out for the benefit of the individual citizens. I mean, that's the principle of democracy. That is a great way to exercise peace in the midst of conflict and force, which is what happens in a government. If you're a dictator, well, you get 100% of the vote. Because no one's allowed to vote and no one's allowed to cast you out. You have ultimate power.
Yeah. One name on the ballot.
Well, and that's what you see in communism as a structure, and in to a lesser degree in socialism. It's semantics once you get into the social realm.
Right.
As to how much democracy disappears as compared to socialism taking its place. Martin Luther spoke about that God creates order and authority in order to restrain evil and protect life. And that's the messiness of the human existence and civilization. God's kingdom is not, that's the kingdom of the world. The kingdom of God is already and not yet. It's moving in. It's establishing itself. And right now we live in this time of the Holy Spirit where God has chosen to remain hidden in his word rather than in a physical presence. And this is God turning sinners into saints through faith, restoring humanity, redeeming humanity individually, person by person, rather than a whole group. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a libertarian spin.
So Jesus was libertarian.
God is interested in the individual, not the collective. But God is interested in the collective, the whole world, through the individual.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's I just want to read one little part of another article that I found as I was looking for this. It's by a guy named Bill Flax. I don't know who Bill Flax is. But
did he create the flaxseed? Is that his?
That's what I'm about to wonder.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Or did he create the bill? Which bill did he create?
Billboards.
Billboards.
No, it's Bill Flax.
Oh.
Bill Flax.
Bill Flax. Anyway, this was in Forbes in 2012, January of 2012. Was Jesus a socialist, capitalist, or something else? So I read this earlier, and it was interesting because the last two paragraphs here, Jesus was, and DJ, you've said this many times, as C.S. Lewis posited, a lunatic, a liar, or Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Those thinking the former, Lord, should stop citing him for pet secular purposes. If acknowledging his divinity, don't diminish it by remaking his mission into yours. I'm a capitalist, and you might be socialists. Christians can be both, but Christ was neither. He was the author and finisher of faith.
Yeah. I like the way you put it earlier. Maybe you've said it on the podcast already, but we're so busy we want Jesus to be on our team, but really,
yeah,
we need to be on his team.
Right. Yeah. Instead of recruiting him onto your team, why don't you just join his?
You know what's interesting too is that when Jesus breaks in, it kind of changes all the rules. Like this is full disclosure. I don't mean to offend anyone, but I consider myself politically a classical liberal. It's more close to the way liberalism was in the 1800s, which the closest in the United States would be libertarian, right? Libertarian used to be synonymous with liberal. Liberal has come to be synonymous with progressive on the left, and conservative has become more synonymous with libertarian on the right.
Okay.
This is what I personally think. I'm all for maximum liberty, minimum government security.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to have government. We need to have functional government. I think, and my personal opinion is lean government is better.
Mm-hmm.
That's for me.
Right.
And that's what I want for you. Like, if you're Muslim, good on you. But because I'm a libertarian, you do you, and I'll do me.
Mm-hmm.
And you deserve all the same rights that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to impose my morality on you. However, my libertarianism has an endpoint, and it's when my neighbor needs my service.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where Christianity, overtakes my libertarianism. Like, I'm all for what you do is your business. It's not my business. Kind of the don't tread on me or mind your own business or whatever.
Yep.
But when my neighbor is suffering, that's where I am to act. I don't think it's the government's job to act.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job to act. And, the church, and this is why we have so many different denominations, is not because we disagree on the main stuff. It's that often we disagree on other things that can affect how we view the main stuff, how we view Jesus, or how we view love for neighbor, or how we view the authority of the Bible. Does the Bible have an authority?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm limited. My libertarian political viewpoint is limited by my Christian vocation, where Christianity trumps it. But politically, I think it's wrong to say, well, everyone has to become Christian by fiat, by law. I would disagree with that, because I think the job of expanding the kingdom is not through government intervention, but it's through the proclamation of the gospel.
So you're more about advocating what you're for rather than what you're against.
Yeah, and that's why I'm a libertarian too, because and want a libertarian style government, because it gives me the freedom to express what I believe. Like, we have a president, right? And every political cycle we'll hear something like, is Joe Biden a good Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Is Donald Trump a good Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Is this person even a Christian?
Right.
I don't necessarily want a Christian in the White House. I want someone who's going to enshrine my right to be a Christian in the White House. And that's a difference. I mean, it's a pretty subtle but clear distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't make this out of whole cloth. I stole this from Martin Luther.
Yeah.
Who said very clearly, I'd much have a capable Turk as a ruler who engages in good government for the sake of the people than an inept Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. Our leaders should be protecting our liberties, and that's a libertarian viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Over and against a socialist viewpoint, which would say the government should take care of our needs.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that are there too. The beauty about the United States is that because we are a libertarian starting point country, we can have diverse views on that and no one gets hurt, hopefully.
Right.
You know, you have, when you have like riots and insurrections, that's contrary to that. That's where the government should step in.
Right.
But to be able to share ideas and to say, "Look, I think communism's a great idea. And I want to advocate for it." Well, because you live in a libertarian viewpoint, starting point country, a republic, you can have those views and share them. And the way to exercise them is in the market of ideas, which is a very libertarian idea itself, that we can have multiple ideas. In socialist countries, you don't get to have diversity of opinion. In communist countries, you don't get to have diversity of opinion. It's this is the opinion, and either you're on board or you zip your lip.
Yeah. You
know your role and you shut your mouth. So anyway.
So The Rock was a communist.
I'd put him kind of in the dictator camp, actually.
Don't sue me, Dwayne.
Do you smell what The Rock is cooking?
Yeah, I think it's a fun conversation to have, but at the end of the day, if you read the Bible as a whole, you can't paint Jesus into that box.
Right.
So
it just doesn't work. No. Whatever kind of box you try to put God in is really in an attempt to control God, and he always seems to find a way out.
Yeah. So Houdini. So Jesus was Houdini.
Yes. It's like you said before. C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has this great line at the end where Lucy, the hero, is speaking to Mr. Tumnus and says, where is he going? Where is Aslan going? The embodiment of Jesus in that book. And Mr. Tumnus says, well, you don't expect him to be in a cage, do you? He's a wild lion. And that's scary, but he's good. That's God. God's not going to get put in a box. Jesus is not going to be put in a box.
Right.
Outside of, he's the boss. And it's a good thing that he is, because he's the only one who is actually perfect to take care of our needs.
You don't have to worry about him.
Right.
Cool. That was fun. Michael, how was that for you?
Yeah.
Did any of these go off?
Oh, I haven't. Have I heard that one before?
That's the light bulb.
That one.
I don't know if I've heard that one before.
No, that's the light bulb. Or maybe you heard this.
Have you
like that?
Have you tried all of those?
Well, yeah, in private, just
on your own time.
On my own time.
DJ
this is my favorite one.
Office.
I just think it's fun. Wah, 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 wah.
Now you know what goes on Monday through Saturday.
Just practicing.
Oh, that was fun. Sarah, what'd you think?
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else? Anybody have anything else?
Well, I'm just curious if there's a rebuttal from anyone at the table. I mean, I said a whole lot of stuff, and I'm waiting for a counterpoint. We might have that later on once Pastor Cross hears this message. He might
yeah. Right. That's
like
true.
Sunday morning.
Like, I can agree with the idea, because like going on to like social media, especially like Facebook nowadays, it's kind of tough. Or even like a couple years ago how long ago was the election?
It was last year in November.
It's hard to think about that.
Yeah.
Seems like a long time ago.
The Biden
like
presidency has been 100 days at this point. Yeah.
So hard to think.
Then
Really?
Then it was the era of Trump for 4 years before that.
COVID has sent us in a time loop.
Yep, it is slowed time.
Yeah.
Feels like anyway.
Yeah.
Weird. But no, like during those times, like going on to like Facebook or any social media, just having to deal with like people's like agendas, it's a lot to handle. Yeah. And especially getting closer and closer to the election, it was dang near insufferable.
Well, yeah, and I think people have really discovered the downside of social media over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, there's been studies put out about how it affects kids And if you're going on social media and you're going away feeling miserable or feeling like you need to pick a fight through a keyboard, those are telltale signs that this is not good.
Maybe it's time to get off of social media.
It's time to step away. You can step away for a year. You go back on. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same.
It's like watching Days of Our Lives.
You won't miss it. You won't miss it. You won't see the second-rate Dukes of Hazzard boys. It'll be the same.
The same Dukes.
The same Dukes every time.
But like when you go on or like going on, you see someone's like, "Oh, if you believe in this, unfriend me now." It's like, well, I believe that. Yeah. I'm not going to unfriend you. Yeah. Because I like to see people for what they do rather than what they believe in, like politically. Yeah. Like what you believe in, your work and how you do it, I much prefer that.
Yeah.
Because there are people that I totally disagree with what they believe in, or I totally do agree in what they believe in, and like their work is great.
Mm-hmm. It's, and what you're advocating, or at least what you're saying, what I see is a big ministry opportunity to share the love of Jesus, to make a personal decision that if you're going to be going on social media, you are not going to get wrapped up in anger, but you're going to spread love. My brother has the best answer for Facebook. He says, all I do is give locations of golf courses that I go to. And I say, happy birthday, whenever a birthday comes up. That's my entire engagement with social media. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty good stuff. You're just positivity.
Probably not a bad thing. I like to share things that are going on at home and on mine.
Yeah.
Like, can I tell the story about Bruce? Mm-hmm. Can I tell the story about Bruce Buffer? I don't know if people know who Bruce Buffer is. He's the guy that he is the ring announcer for UFC, and his tagline is to get on there and go, "It's time," like that. I mean, obviously, I can't do it justice, but anyway, I shared this morning that yesterday I found a compilation of Bruce saying "it's time" over and over and over and over and over again, and when it's time to leave the house in the morning, if the kids aren't ready when it's time, Bruce lets them know it's time until we go out the door. But those are the things I like to share on social media.
Well, and
let's be funny.
And that's fun. Yeah. That's not if you don't agree with my worldview, then you're dead to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just, that doesn't give life. That doesn't build me up. And if I was hearing that or expressing that, I think I would feel worse by the time I was done than better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. For sure. So cool. Mm-hmm. That was fun.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Anything else?
Sarah, you got anything?
No, I think everything for me always just goes back to, it's really hard as humans to hear that we're the problem. So like,
we're not perfect.
It's literally like life gets a lot easier once you can just repeat like the line of, well, yeah, the world would be perfect and things would be great if we would just let God be in control, but we're the ones messing it up.
Right?
Mm-hmm. It's a very negative thing to say, but it's the truth. And
it's one of those aha moments too. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that just makes everything really simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
So once you get into that, it's like, life just gets easier.
That's why we need the king, not a king. We need
the king. Yep.
Capital THE.
Yep. All caps. Cool. That was fun. So, Sarah?
You're going to pray us out of here, Ryan?
What? Listen, Coy, you were gone last week.
I was on vacation.
Yeah, in Arizona.
Yep.
Sure.
I can pray us out of here.
Okay.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to gather and to discuss. And Lord, we thank you that you are not a libertarian, a socialist, a communist, a dictator, none of the above, but you are the one true king that is in control. And while right now we can't always see what you have planned for us, we know that you have a plan and that you are guiding us always. And we thank you for that. And Lord, I hope that whoever is listening to this podcast today knows that, knows your love, and that they're able to share that with others. In your name I pray. Amen.
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 Hey, Ryan, do you mind if I do the outro?
Did you approve of this?
Look at the time.
For those
We'll try it, but
for
Michael.
those asking, I'm washing my hands of this whole thing.
All right.
Let's hear it.
All right.
This could be make or break for you here,
All
Michael.
right. Well, from all of us here at Atonement and from Ryan.
Take it away, Ryan. Good try, Michael.
All right. Well, so anybody looking for a place to worship this weekend, you can always check us out at atonement.live or atonementfargo.org, or go on YouTube and search Atonement Fargo. You can find all of our old messages and broadcasts and podcasts. And so you can check us out there. So for Sarah DeYoung, Pastor DJ Lura, and Michael McClellan, my name is Ryan Janke. Join us next time for another riveting episode of That Podcast.